It is Wednesday, and it's time for the morning call with Tom Dabertin on WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. And I never understood that song. So I'm hoping, Lynette, you understand it. It has a great beat to it, okay? I actually downloaded it some years ago when it was popular, but I don't really understand it. So, I mean, I kind of do, but I think it's kind of a dumb song as far as the words, but the music's kind of good. So there you go. You're not on. There you go.
There we go.
Now you are.
Yeah. I think I heard that it's about a school shooting or something.
Yeah, I think it is too, except that it doesn't it like the words don't really make sense, but hey, whatever. Nonetheless, it's great to be here with you. We're going to be here until 8:30, and the Town of Dyer show will come on WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. And you can also listen to us, of course, on YouTube Live, Jed TV, and don't forget the TuneIn app. So you've got lots of choices to listen to us until 8:30. But we're going to talk about a bunch of things this morning. I want to talk about this new so-called SB1 or Senate Enrolled Act 1 that got passed this year and how it's going to affect local municipalities, counties, and school districts. And there is a report by Scott Small, who is the Director of Finance for Lake County, that I think has been glossed over for some time, that really is a telltale sign of some of the problems that we have with our tax system in Northwest Indiana. So I want to get into that, and as well as anything else that you want to talk about. But before we do anything, we'd better do traffic and weather. And let me just say, I meant to bring in my laptop, and I'm working off my phone, folks, but traffic in Northwest Indiana does not look bad this morning. 8094 is moving pretty well. I-65 is in good shape. The toll road, Klein Avenue are all fine. Go over the line into Illinois. There's a backup basically up around where the old Jay's potato chip plant was on the Bishop Ford. And then another fairly good-sized backup on the Dan Ryan this morning. So the Ryan basically backs up from about 47th down to almost 22nd. So that's a little bit odd this early in the morning. So some problems getting into the city. That's probably the number one route that people take from Northwest Indiana is the Ryan. When you look at 294, it looks pretty good. The Kennedy, the Stevenson, the Eisenhower, kind of their usual problems. Actually, the Kennedy is not looking too bad this morning, which is kind of a surprise because all the construction. But otherwise, take your time, be careful, and let's talk about weather.
Good morning, everyone. Today we're at 67 degrees with highs of 70 and lows of 60. It's going to be not as warm, but with a stray shower. It should be cloudy this morning and then intervals of clouds and sunshine this afternoon. Tonight will be clouds breaking with a couple of showers. And then tomorrow on Thursday, we'll be having highs of 72 and lows of 54 with clouds and breaks of sun. Should be breezy with a couple of showers. And then Friday, we'll be having highs of 79 and lows of 55. And should be comfortable with plenty of sunshine.
Yeah, and it looks kind of like a nice weekend coming up. I mean, you have any plans to be outside or nothing yet? It's only Wednesday, right?
Well, tomorrow is my birthday.
It is?
Yes.
Well, congratulations. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Okay, people, you got to call in. You've got to wish Lynette happy birthday when you call in. Well, that's great. That's awesome. Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
See, now, if you were a guy, we'd ask you how old, but we're not going to do that. But you're young. You've got plenty of birthdays ahead of you, but congratulations. That's
Thank you,
wonderful.
thank you.
Yeah, it looks like a decent weekend, though, coming up. It's supposed to be kind of sunny and relatively warm, I think, in the mid-80s. So a nice kind of last weekend of summer, even though technically we're out of summer, but unofficially we're still in it. So it'll be a nice weekend. Mm-hmm. We were talking off the air, and I mentioned that last weekend I was down in Florida for a few days, and it was very nice, very peaceful, very tranquil. People who go down to Florida this time of the year are kind of amazed, and even I am, even though I have a condo there, that there's not a lot of people down there. All those big crowds for Fort Lauderdale and that whole area are not there right now. They're relatively few, and part of it is because it's kind of the rainy season in Florida. So we went down there on Saturday. We did another bike ride, about 24 miles, came back, and Donna says, okay, we're going to go to the beach. And I got dressed. I came out of the bathroom. I'm ready to go to the beach. I've got a swimsuit on, and I look outside, and it's pouring. And you think it's going to be one of these passing showers, and it rained for about an hour and a half. So not a great day for the beach, but it was actually very nice before and after. It's just one of those, it's kind of that rainy season. So 845-1100, and we've already got callers, so let's go to the calls. Good morning, you're on the air.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning. How are you, Mike?
Okay, what's the temperature of the water down there in Florida?
You know what? I'm glad that you asked. The temperature in the ocean is about 90 degrees.
Okay, all right. What's the temperature of your pool?
Well, temperature in the pool, I'm not sure. I'd say it's probably about 80, 81 degrees. But, Mike, the waters off Pompano Beach from kind of Fort Lauderdale north to Boca Raton, relatively protected waters because of some offshore coral reefs, and the temperature was amazing. Donna on Thursday, I think it was, said, or no, Friday, she said, you've got to come in the water. I'm like, no, I'm just going to lay on the beach. And she's like, no, you've got to go in the water. I finally went in, and I saw why. It was warmer than the air temperature. It was unbelievable. Very, very nice.
Hey, I got something I kind of want to stress, and maybe people can answer yes or no, or
sure.
City officials or public officials or politicians could answer this question yes or no. Okay, a couple years ago when they had to strike over at Torrance, and the union was striking, and they had picketers out there, they did not block the roads. People could go in and out of the places. They did not block them or push people out of the way or anything. The unions, they were picketing, okay? In Hammond, it even happened. There was a roofing company that was picketing, and I passed by that thing every day. They did not block the entrances to a business.
Right,
okay?
And legally they can't.
Okay, legally they can't. Okay, now, up in Bedford, that ICE facility, okay, that's not a state road that their building is on, okay?
And they can't block that either, and that's why some people have been arrested.
But that's what I want to ask is, okay, the protester says peaceful protest. Well, I'm watching how they're pushing and shouting and everything. To me, that's not a peaceful protest. But the thing is, okay, the city, because ICE put up a fence around it, they told this ICE they have to take that fence down because it's illegal in case emergency vehicles. But when them protesters, peaceful protesters at the ICE facility were blocking them and pushing them, and they can't get out. Why did the city officials, police department come there and make those peaceful protesters get out of the entranceway and let them through? Why did the city officials not send the police there?
Well, because
clear
the
it out?
state of Illinois, and again, this is something that's been in the news quite a bit. The state of Illinois is a sanctuary state. They basically are at war with the federal government over the arrest and capture of illegals, and I think it's kind of a tragic mess, and it's just it's exemplary of what goes on in the state of Illinois. I mean, state of Illinois is very dysfunctional in my mind.
But it was said right on the news, media news this morning. Bedford police city officials made them take that temporary fence down because it was illegal and blocking in case an emergency vehicle's got to get through. But all them peaceful protesters were blocking a road, and if emergency vehicle had to come through, they couldn't get through because all them peaceful protesters were blocking an entrance.
Well, Mike, there is this ongoing push back and forth between the federal government and the state government. The Supremacy Clause largely says that the federal government can do whatever it needs to do. The state is pushing back. They're picking up, ordinance violations, all kinds of things. It's harassment by both sides, and I just think it's unfortunate. Most people want law enforcement to be respected, regardless of what law enforcement role they play. And what's going on in Illinois is just a tragedy. Pritzker just is doing it largely for political purposes, and it's just really unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's like, the railroad companies, okay, which the Mayor Hammond even said it to himself one time. Railroad company owns the railroad, the property.
That's right.
And they can block our tracks, and they can give them all the tickets they want, and nothing they can do, And
That's right.
I mean, it's a
railroad. Let me just clarify for listeners. The railroad basically gives access across their property, so it'd be like you giving access across your backyard, and so that's why they can pretty much do whatever they want.
Yeah, and wonderful Dave from Gary that rescued me in July 9th.
Good man.
In his nice, very, very cold pickup truck that I thought I was going to the morgue.
Yes.
Well, anyhow, yesterday I'm kind of back at helping the facility because simple reason I got to help this guy from New York. Well, the wonderful guy in the silver pickup truck I thought he was taking me to the morgue, passed by in his work truck that he's working, that he delivers, tooted the horn, waved at me, and I'm thinking, I wonder if he's got real cold air in that truck.
Now, Dave's a good guy, and he did text me last night and said that he saw you yesterday. So it's good, good to hear that you're back to work, at least part-time.
Well, I'm kind of, they called me out specifically for this guy from New York because of a simple reason. I got to get this guy passed within like 10 days, and they know how I train people. And it's kind of like right now I'm going to probably get ready. I got to pick them up at the train station. I sat there yesterday morning over at that train tracks right there on Indianapolis and Michigan, and I'm watching how people are going in and out, and it was very interesting. You could see a whole bunch of people go in. You see them up on that platform, and all of a sudden here comes a train. They disappear, and then the next one comes. You see a whole bunch of crowd. It was interesting watching that area there, and the parking lot is kind of different. I mean, being that I'm trying to drive right now, I went down the wrong way of one of the roadways, and the guy kind of waved at me. And I put my hand out like, I'm sorry, bud, But it was interesting. But, I'm going to let you go. So now if Walt calls in right after me, the good, the bad, the ugly news, I hope the professor has just the good news this morning. I mean, I love listening to anything he says.
All right. Well, we have another caller, so we're going to move on. Thanks so much, Mike. You have a great day.
All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. 845-1100. We have another caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Here's the good news item for the day. New Girl Scout cookie takes Rocky Road to flavor. A new cookie is joining the Girl Scout family. Explore More's, a Rocky Road ice cream-inspired sandwich cookie, will round out the lineup for the 2026 Girl Scout cookie season. So there's the good news for the day.
So that might be an interesting flavor, and I might try it. But I usually buy 2 cases of Do-si-dos. I love their peanut butter sandwich cookies, and I absolutely every single year I buy cases. I don't buy boxes. I buy cases of Do-si-dos.
Well, let's talk about the bad news.
How unhealthy those are for me? Yes. No. Go ahead.
No. It's a good cause, and as long as you don't overdo it.
Right. It's a good cause, and I'm sitting downstairs in my basement eating 2 cases of Do-si-dos, Walt. Go figure.
Well, keep in mind this about Chicago and Illinois. Chicago has been declared over and over and over again by studies of various organizations, including University of Illinois, the most corrupt city in America. Illinois, the third most corrupt city, the third most corrupt state in Illinois. So lawlessness is just part of the culture. It's just that simple.
Yeah, it's Professor, isn't it his last name Simpson, that does the annual study on political corruption in the United States, and Cook County, Illinois, has been number 1 in his study for decades now. I think he's done it for 30 years, and his point is that if you take New Jersey, New York, and Philadelphia, that whole area, it doesn't amount to as much political corruption as what goes on in Chicago. And they talk about Chicago being the city that works. So again, I went down to Florida over the weekend. When I came back, my wife pointed out they have these planters on the parking garage at Midway Airport. They're filled with weeds. They're just filled with weeds. You see weeds everywhere. You don't see that in other cities. When you go to other airports, airports look great. Chicago's airports are looking really dingy and dirty, and the surroundings don't look attractive, and it's really, really reprehensible.
Here's the kind of stories you get out of Chicago. This is Chicago Sun-Times, September 19th. Pritzker posed for photo with anti-violence worker, later charged in fatal smash and grab. And then there's a story out of the current issue of Chicago Magazine, the tragedy of Lil Dirk. He rose to stardom rapping about the violence of the streets. Now he's accused of conspiring to kill a rival. Ain't that the Chicago way?
You know, again, you look at Chicago, and I'm just shocked by the decay and the dirt, the litter, the filth that exists. Chicago was always known as a city that works. Now it's a city that just doesn't work. Nobody does anything. You go to Midway Airport, for example, and afterwards they want you to take a bus over to the garage, and the bus driver just sits there, and they've got the doors closed, and people are knocking on it, and he's like, nah, I'm not ready. And then finally, this woman driver pulled up, and she said, I'm going to the parking lot, but I'll take all you people to the garage because he won't. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that goes on day in and day out in Chicago. People don't work. People don't do their jobs. Again, you've got weeds hanging down from the supposedly hanging garden planters on the garage over there. It's really sad. It's truly sad. The decay that you're seeing in Chicago. If you go on Garfield Boulevard right now, they just repaved it. And so, you know, Walt, how they put down the permanent striping, and they heat it and they put it down, and it lasts for years and years. Somebody put it down last week after they paved, but they didn't heat it up. And on Sunday, there were just these great big wads of striping blowing around down the street. It was all coming off because nobody heated it.
Yeah. Well, I worked in Chicago for 40 years in various professional capacities, and the one thing I came to conclude is corruption pervades every aspect of every major institution in Chicago and Cook County. The worst of it, of course, is local Chicago government, but the so-called Chicago way is it's like a cancer. It spreads everywhere. And the attitude, I mean, people who are not involved with the corruption, their attitude is, well, that's just the way it is.
Well, I find it interesting, though, that as corrupt as Chicago is and as problematic as the state of Illinois is, and we talk about it all the time on these airwaves, when you look at the state of Indiana and what they're doing with this new, the Senate Enrolled Act 1 or SB 1, they're playing a shell game with us. So you've got a governor who comes in and says he's going to give everybody tax relief. So you know what, Walt? It sounds great. You're going to get a $300 up to $300 reduction on your property taxes. Sounds good, right?
Yeah, we'll see.
Well, you're going to get $300 up to $300. 10% or up to $300. Most people will get $300 in Lake County. The problem is that to supplement that, they're going to basically authorize local income taxes. So most of us are going to pay more money than we paid before to make up for the $300. It basically, if you get $50,000-$60,000 a year, you're going to pay $700 or $800 a year more in taxes for that $300 discount. But it sounds really good. It's a shell game. So, we're not going to take the money out of your left pocket. We're going to take it out of your right pocket. But it sounds good. It just, I mean, in fact, I looked at the taxes with the increases in taxes that have been authorized by Senate Bill 1, now Senate Enrolled Act 1. you will see basically almost as much tax out of your pocket in Indiana as you will in Illinois. Illinois, the local income taxes basically amount to about 4.9%, and in Indiana it's a 3% state income tax. When you add in these local taxes, you will be somewhere. You could be actually more than the state of Illinois. You could be upwards of 6%.
Yeah. Well, have you looked at your energy bill?
Don't get me started. Energy in Indiana. Explain this. I looked online. The Department of Local Government and Finance for the state of Indiana is charged with appraising and assessing the value of industrial property, including NIPSCO property. In other states, since I was down in Florida over the weekend, I pulled up what Florida does. Florida taxes utilities at the same rate they tax everybody else. You have a utility corridor, you pay taxes on it. Indiana has an abridged and alterated tax structure for utilities. In other words, they pay almost nothing. And they have all these vacant properties. They have all these runs that you see throughout the area. And they don't pay taxes. And then on top of that, their rates are significantly higher than they are in other states.
Well, I compared my bill from August of 25 to the bill I got in August of 24. And there was virtually no difference in the utilization of NIPSCO's services. And my bill went up over 30%. How about yours?
Same thing. And you know what? NIPSCO says, well, they got approved for, a 16.5% increase in rates. But what they don't point out is all those additional fees. When you read your bill, you see all these service charges, all these utilization charges that they've now tacked onto the bill. So when they say, well, our rates are comparable to other states, they're not, because they're not including all of those additional, pipeline and distribution and transportation fees and all the things that they put at the bottom of that bill that rack up hundreds of dollars for the average person. It's just wrong. And again, they don't pay the property tax rate that you would in other states. But I want to get to property taxes because the assessed value of your home has increased significantly over the last 10 years, in case you didn't notice. But wait till you hear at the same period of time what's happened on industry in this area, because it hasn't increased at the rate that property taxes on homeowners has. Not a surprise.
Well, they are organized, and they have lawyers and lobbyists and all kinds of things, and they get their way over the little guy.
Yeah, they do, and then they tell you, how much they're doing for you, and they're just not. I mean, again, I pulled up my bill in Florida again, and for the condo, my total utility bill has never been over $38. Okay.
Wow.
And it's 2-bedroom, 2-bath. I mean, it's not as nearly as big as my home. I'll admit that. But when I look at the actual rate, the comparable rate is the Florida rate is a few cents lower per kilowatt. But then when you add in all those additional service fees that NIPSCO puts in, it's about double. It's about double per kilowatt. And there lies the problem. So it's smoke and mirrors. It's just like this tax cut that they're going to give you from the state of Indiana. They're going to make you feel good. Oh, boy, you're going to get $300 less. Walt's going to feel really good, but they're going to take an extra $800 a year out of your pocket to pay for it. So
well, they're not the only ones who are lying to us. I mean, you have these eco groups who lie their heads off, but there's an antidote to it, and that is on the local public television. There's a very good program on Tuesday at 4 o'clock. It's called Energy Switch. And there's a moderator who's very knowledgeable about the energy industry. And he has two guests. One, shall we say, skeptical of the wonders of wind power and solar power. And on the other side, you have somebody who is advocating for solar and wind power. And it's a very instructive experience because there's two highly experienced people on both sides of the issue, and the moderator makes certain that both sides get their say, and you'll learn a lot about the energy industry.
You will, but you have to read state law too, because I've been on here before. My son's been on with me, and we've talked about these package nuclear plants. I did not realize until over the weekend that Indiana just passed a new law that says that a utility can charge all charges for exploring the possibility of putting in package reactors. Even if they don't put in the reactors, they can still charge the cost of studying putting in those reactors off to their customers. So how do you like that? So basically, NIPSCO can sit there and just hire a bunch of people to sit there and say, okay, we're going to study this, and we've got to pay for it.
Well, it gets worse. There's another program on local public television called Great Lakes Now.
I've seen that show, yes.
And this was on September 1st. It was at 6:30 in the evening. And they noted that when a coal-fired plant is closed down, the ratepayers, we still pay for that coal-fired plant.
Yep.
Plus 9 to 10% profits to the utility.
Yep.
How about them apples?
Again, it's just, you know what? By the time you're done, you have no pockets left. They've ripped your pants wide open. Hey, thanks so much, Walt. Thanks for calling. We're going to take a quick break. 845-1100 is the number to call and join in the discussion. When we come back, I want to spend some more time talking about this new state law that Governor Braun makes it sound like he's doing everybody such a great favor, giving everybody this reduction in their taxes. We'll be right back. You're listening to The Morning Call. We're back, and let's take a look again at traffic and weather. Traffic is really starting to build on the Bishop Ford. It's now backing up down to about 130th going northbound. And there's still a pretty heavy backup on the Dan Ryan. Otherwise, traffic looks pretty good throughout the region. 8094 is in good shape, 294. I-65, the toll road, and Klein Avenue all look pretty decent. Skyway looks fine, except that as soon as you get off the Skyway, you're going to run into traffic now down to about 47th. So not a great morning going into the city from northwest Indiana. Otherwise, generally it doesn't look bad throughout the Chicago region. But before we go to traffic, I just want to mention Region News Source has just great up-to-the-minute news. And they have a story about a real genius from Hammond, John Broxton Kellogg, age 36, who was actually caught in a high-speed chase. The speeds exceeded 120 miles an hour. So he wouldn't be going anywhere. Basically they ought to sentence him to be stuck in Chicago traffic, which if you've ever driven into the city like I had over the years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You're not going anywhere fast, and you get people who think they are. They get on the shoulder, and then they hit somebody and go nowhere. With that, let's go to a much better discussion. Let's go to weather.
Morning, everyone. Today we're at 67 degrees with highs of 70 and lows of 60. It's not going to be as warm with a stray shower, cloudy this morning, and then intervals of clouds and sunshine this afternoon. And tonight we'll be having clouds breaking with a couple of showers. Tomorrow and Thursday we'll be having highs of 72 and lows of 54 with clouds and breaks of sun. Should be breezy with a couple of showers. And then Friday we'll be having highs of 79 and lows of 55 and should be comfortable with plenty of sunshine.
And more importantly, tomorrow is Lynette's birthday.
It is.
So happy birthday again.
Thank you.
845-1100. Have you ever driven your car 120 miles an hour?
No.
What's the fastest you've ever driven?
Probably maybe 80, 70.
120 miles an hour. I've been driving for a long time. 120 miles an hour. What a genius. This guy just, he not the sharpest tack in the box. He is traveling 102 miles an hour in a 55 mile an hour zone on I-80, and then they chased him and basically reached speeds of 120 miles an hour. Just not the smartest guy. He doesn't realize that he can't outrun the radio. Unreal. 845-1100 is the number to call. So when Walt was on, I started to talk about the new tax structure in the state of Indiana. And it sounds great. We're going to force communities to reduce their costs. So Hammond already has a hiring freeze. A number of other communities are talking about it throughout the state of Indiana. This is not a region issue. But what is unique to the region is that when you start to look at the taxes that we pay, you find out that industry in Northwest Indiana over the last few years has paid a lot less money or saw a lot less in increases compared to other areas. And again, it's just very interesting. A study by Scott Small, who is the Director of Finance for Lake County, and I may have him come on the show in the very near future to talk about the study, because he points out that while most homeowners in Lake County saw a dramatic increase in the value of their homes over the last, say, 10 years. He gives some examples. A home in Cedar Lake that went from 156 to 276. A home in St. John that went from 379 to 483. Another home in Munster, 242 to 337. That while they saw these dramatic increases in their assessed valuation, as much as 76%, the average increase for industry in Northwest Indiana basically crept up at an annual rate of about 1%. And so the total valuation that we draw our property taxes on, now more than 60% of all taxes are based on residential tax, and just a very small amount based on industry. And to me, that seems wrong. And by the way, we've talked about this before. The appraised value, the assessed value of, say, something like U.S. Steel is like $100 and some million, or the BP oil refinery is based at about $100 million. But your home is based at market value. You don't get all the adjustments that industry gets. So 845-1100, we've got a couple of callers. Good morning, you're on the air.
Change subjects on you a little bit. Are you familiar with this congressman from Tennessee, Tim Burchett? I believe that's how you pronounce his name.
No, I'm not.
Anyways, he was had a little thing a couple days ago, and they have the UFO UAP committee. Okay, right?
Yes.
And he revealed that entities are coming from 5 to 6 deep water sites on Earth, and these vehicles are coming from these deep, basically out of the ocean up into our atmosphere. Can't believe nobody's talked about this.
Well, there has been you're right. There has been some recent coverage, and over the years there've been a few claims about these something coming out from very deep ocean sites, and they come out of the ocean and into the atmosphere, and a lot of the claims, of course, people dismiss, but many of these claims are coming from the U.S. Navy, from other foreign navies. I mean, they're saying that they're not sure what to make of these sites. And I think I mentioned before, there's a book called Wheels in the Sky, and it was written by a University of Chicago professor about a dozen years ago that talked about the historical sightings of UFOs or UAPs, over the years. And basically it went back and looked even at biblical times and sightings that are mentioned in the Bible of these odd objects that are flying, and he covers a little bit about these objects coming out of the sea. So these claims have been around for centuries.
Yeah, but it's just kind of weird. I mean, this guy that I was talking, this guy from Tennessee, it's not like this is some, this ain't coming out of Jasmine Crockett's mouth. You know what I mean? This guy's pretty well respected.
Yeah, and, they've had, what's her name, Luna out of Florida is the chairwoman of the committee. And it's interesting. It doesn't get a lot of coverage. I saw just a little snippet on one of the news websites, I think it was Apple News, about the hearings. But most people dismiss it, and it is kind of strange that you have these phenomenon as they're describing it, right? They describe it as phenomenon, and it's very bizarre that these things are happening. So, what's the cause? What's the background? I think a lot of the unidentified flying objects that we're seeing right now, once again, are basically advanced technology for the U.S. military and other militaries.
Oh, sure, yeah.
The newest fighter plane, the sixth generation fighter jet, the F-47. They point out they've already got 2 of them built and flying. They're testing them, so people are seeing these strange things in the sky. Those are probably the newest fighter jets, but there is a lot to be said about these unidentified, aerial phenomenon. I guess UAP is what they're calling it. That they exist, and people, even in the military, don't seem to have an explanation. And I did read one account where they said they saw something come off of the coast off of Monterey, and they said it came out of the water and shot up into the sky, and I believe it was seen by a destroyer or a cruiser.
Well, they had video, they unclassified some video from the U.S. military. I was at that hearing. I was kind of bouncing in and out of it, just watching some, then go back to it. And they had a Reaper. I don't know if you saw this one, but they had that video from that Reaper drone firing Hellfire missiles at this thing, and it was just basically eating them.
Yeah, I did see that. I did see that. I saw that report. That was the report that I saw actually on Apple News, come to think of it. And that was amazing that they had a Reaper drone. It was firing at this unidentified object, and basically, as you said, it was just absorbing the projectiles. They had no impact whatsoever.
Yeah,
it's very, very odd time. Again,
interesting.
If you read some of the, there's all kinds of books, and there's a lot of them that I dismiss. I think I mentioned before that I knew somebody who was in the CIA, and he pointed out some of the big claims that we've had over the years about Roswell, about Ketchenberg, Pennsylvania, and what really happened. That there were, Ketchenberg, Pennsylvania is in a direct line to the west of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and he said hypothetically if SR-71 Blackbird had been flying out of Wright-Pat, which they did, and it lost its engine nozzle, it would be bell-shaped. It'd fall to earth. And basically the description of the Pennsylvania incident is that the military came in and declared martial law, kept everybody in their homes, and people saw them removing this bell-shaped object out of the woods. Well, that was just a part of an SR-71. Okay, that's explained. There's some explanations that I find very interesting about the claims at Roswell. But those are those big celebrated incidents. It's all these other incidents that don't seem to have a real easy explanation as to what's going on.
Yeah, and you were talking earlier. What airport do you fly in and out of when you go from to Pompano Beach there?
So we fly in and out of Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale. Okay,
yeah,
well, I'm
about 11 miles from our condo.
I frequent RSW out of Fort Myers a lot.
Oh, okay.
And isn't you are just spot on. When you get off that airplane after you come back from Florida, from them Florida airports, isn't when you walk out of the doors of Midway, isn't it the most grotesque thing you've ever seen in your life when you come back from Florida?
It's just filthy. It's and it's dirty, and it's run down, and then they make you wait for that bus for the garage or the economy lot. And they make you stand, by the way, without any protection, so it can be pouring rain, and you have to stand out in the rain and wait for the bus. And those bus drivers are so rude and cranky. And you walk through the garage, and my wife pointed out all these hanging gardens that are supposed to be there, and instead they're just filled with weeds. It's really sad. It's really, really
I'm
sad.
telling you, every time I come back, I am just like, what in the hell is this?
Well, you know what? While I'm at it, let me put in a plug. If you've driven around Northwest Indiana, A lot of municipalities will have entry signs, and you'll see, like, for example, there's one just down the street from the studio here for Hammond, and it looks nice. It's nice. It's not great. But if you want to see the nicest street decorations and street planners in Northwest Indiana, do you know what city you need to go to?
Well, I'd say, Crown Point has some nice ones, but go ahead.
They have some nice ones. I've been to Crown Point quite a bit lately, but I will tell you the nicest planners in Northwest Indiana are on Columbus Drive in East Chicago. Drive down Columbus Drive and you will not believe how beautiful the planners are and how well maintained they are. The problem with a lot of cities here is they build these planners, and then before you know it, you start seeing weeds crop up and they look kind of run down and they're not as nice and as crisp as those planners in East Chicago. They remind me of the planners in Florida. They're that beautiful. I can't believe what Mayor Copeland has done on Columbus Drive in East Chicago. It's just too bad that he can't do the same thing, say, on Indianapolis Boulevard or Chicago Avenue, but Columbus Drive is spectacular. When you drive from Klein Avenue to Indianapolis, you cannot believe how beautiful it is.
Yeah, it's just like, same thing in Florida. When you any airport in Florida, when you pull like into the main entrance, there's usually an arched sign over the road or the highway, "Welcome to whatever airport," and it's like, wow, this is really nice on the eyes. And you just go into the sewer Chicago up by Midway, and it's like, ugh.
Yeah, it's just it's really sad. But again, Mayor Johnson says he doesn't have a spending problem. He has a revenue problem. He just needs more revenue.
Yeah, he's gonna need some revenue next year, real bad.
The highest taxes in the nation for commercial properties are in Chicago, Illinois now. Number one. Yeah. They now have higher rates than even Los Angeles. Unbelievable. Hey, thanks so much for calling.
Have a good one.
All right, 845-1100. We've got another caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
I'm going to call you my psychiatrist.
I'm MX. I'm worried. I'm worried now.
You know what? It bothers me when you have the Pledge of Allegiance and you don't stand. Yesterday, I was at a local dog and pet place, and somebody parked in a handicap spot, didn't have a handicap sticker. It looked pretty strong to me, and those two things bother me. I just wish maybe the mayor put me on as a deputy or something, because I'll tell you, I know the police see a lot, but that little stuff kind of aggravates me. Now,
it's like a lack. It's a lack of respect, is what you're talking about. And look, you can't legally force people to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, and the handicap stickers drive me nuts too. Strachan Van Til, I see people all the time from Illinois. They'll back into a handicap spot right at the entrance of the Whiting Strachan Van Til. If there's a Hammond police officer working off duty, I'll usually point it out to them, and they'll go out and tell the person they've got to move. But it's a lack of respect. It's the same that the previous caller and I were talking about when you go to the airport in Chicago. The lack of respect that the employees that work at that airport have for the property and for the people in general that are the reason why they have a job. It's a lack of respect. Go ahead.
Exactly, lack of respect, and it was Illinois' plates. Now, this gets into something. Eddie Melton, Mike Suggs, I follow certain people. They don't know it, but I follow them. And she has claimed she's got fired.
Oh, you're talking about Lavetta Sparks Wade.
Yeah, I don't want to say names.
Well, I'll say the name. I'll say the name. She posted it. So she posted that she was fired. Yes.
And I'm thinking it was over posts before that. And I'm thinking, Frank Mervyn supported House Bill Resolution 282 to make some kind of memorial over Charlie Kirk. So you got to know better by now that if you diss Charlie Kirk in any way, you're gonna get fired.
Well, let me just point out something. And again, you're right. Mervan supported the resolution. I think it was the right thing to do. I think it was wrong that 58 Democrats refused to vote for it because the House resolution honoring the former Speaker of the House and the other state rep that were killed in Minnesota passed unanimously by the House. All Republicans, all Democrats voted for it. When there have been other shootings and other tragedies, it's always unanimous. And in the case of Charlie Kirk, the fact that 58 Democrats failed to vote for it, it's kind of like my disdain over Mervan when he couldn't stand for the little boy that had cancer during the State of the Union speech by Trump earlier this year. I mean, you don't have to agree with Trump, you don't have to like Trump, but when you're honoring a little boy that has cancer that's had like 15 surgeries, you stand for him, and that was wrong.
Exactly. Those two things that will always be in my mind. That for that little boy, he didn't do nothing to anybody. And if you ever been under surgery, you know what I'm talking about. And the other thing is men and women's sports. Now, I'm thinking he's scared of the redistricting, or I would like to see term limits, because when you can get a pension and work one day on the job and get a pension and lifetime salary, God bless you. But the rest of us peons, we grunts, as I'd call it, we're in the trenches here for 30 years to get that, if you can get it.
I'd like to see term limits in Congress. And again, Mitch McConnell, who's a Republican, is the poster boy for term limits. So is Chuck Schumer. Those two guys, Nancy Pelosi is right up there with them. There are plenty of Democrats and Republicans that should not be in Congress, and term limits would solve that problem. As far as redistricting, though, I'm not a big fan of the idea. I'm really not. If you want to redistrict and you want to change things, do it under the normal circumstances. I don't like the political motivation of redistricting right now so that they can, basically change the structure in Indiana. There are 2 Democratic congressmen and 7 Republican, and whether you like Frank Mervan or not, to change his district just so that you can make sure that it goes Republican, to me, it doesn't sit right. Okay, if you don't like Frank Mervan, vote him out of office, by all means, but don't redistrict just to kind of cook the books, and that's what they're doing. I'm not in favor of that one at all.
Exactly. Okay, I'll let you go, but I like to go deeper into the Mike Suggs.
Yeah, well, you know what? Call back.
This is a big one here.
I want you to call back a little bit later. Call back because I want to talk about the tax issue. You're going to find it very interesting. But we've got another caller. And we're going to take the caller, and then we're going to go to a break. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Wanted to let you know it's Hump Day.
It is Hump Day, and it is Wednesday. It's Hump Day, and it's always good to be here with you.
Hey, a couple things that I've been thinking about while you were talking about the whole assessed value issue and everything else, and whoever wrote the article is obviously just trying to stir up some controversy and trying to just grab some readers or something. I guess I don't know. Maybe you really can't compare residential property assessments versus industrial.
Well, you can't in the state of Indiana because, in part, the formula that's used for the state of Indiana for industrials is somewhat confidential and grossly inaccurate compared to other states. I mean, you can't tell me that the assessed value of the BP oil refinery is $100 million, or that the assessed value of U.S. Steel is like 100 and some million. That doesn't make sense. The assessed value of every other piece of property is based on market value. If they wanted to sell that oil refinery, it would be sold for billions of dollars. And I'm not saying that they should use market value, but it seems like they use so many write-offs that by the time you're done with it, they're paying almost nothing.
Well, and that's that's very accurate. And you have to thank the controlling party downstate that let them get away with self-assessment.
I agree with you. I agree. I think the Republicans, people can talk all they want, but the Republicans in Indiana basically have come up with a strategy to cook the books when it comes to certain entities that put a lot of money into lobbying and a lot of money into those campaigns and to keep those people in office. And you're absolutely right. I mean, I remember years ago it came out that one of the comparables being used for BP oil, and I'm not picking on BP, they're good people, but the one of the comparables that's used for this refinery in Whiting is a mining operation in southern Indiana. It's like, wait a minute, a strip mine coal mine versus an oil refinery. And they said, well, they both produce energy. What do you want?
Yeah. Well, and when you're talking about the industrial areas and the large industrial companies and manufacturing in the area, you really have to not knock BP because, I mean, they do a lot for like the city of Whiting and everything else. I mean, they are good neighbors. Whether or not they're paying the appropriate tax dollars, it's a different story. But
I've been
they
involved.
Contribute more to Whiting.
I've been involved in Whiting Robertsdale probably more than most people for the last 40 some years, and BP does do its part, but it doesn't do as much as some people think. I mean, there are false rumors that BP plows the snow. They don't plow the snow. There's false rumors that BP basically responds to all home fires in Whiting. That's not true either. It's usually Hammond and East Chicago that respond. And the reason why is they have a fantastic fire department, but their fire department is designed for industrial fires, not for residential fires. So there's a lot of false information too. But BP does do its part, no doubt about it. They're at the table, they're involved, and I'm not knocking them. I'm knocking the people who came up with the tax structure. Again, BP, U.S. Steel, Cleveland Cliffs, you can't blame them, okay, because they're basically reaping the benefit of a system that is completely corrupt and lacks any explanation if you compare it to any other state. What Indiana does on industrial property is ridiculous.
Well, yeah, and I'll agree with you on that. But like I said, with BP, you have to admit they're a better neighbor to the community than, say, U.S. Steel is with Gary. When was the last time you heard of U.S. Steel, spending any amount of money to help out the city of Gary?
Well, I've heard, I have heard some stories. I've actually, without naming names, I've been told by a couple of elected officials in Gary that U.S. Steel does actually help out quite a bit on some projects. They've been willing to get involved and engaged with the community. So I don't think that's totally correct, but it's always when you're looking at it from a distance. So I know what BP does because it's right there, in my community, and I know less about what goes on with U.S. Steel and Gary currently. But my understanding from people who are in the know that they do more than a lot of people realize. So.
Okay. You know what? If U.S. Steel is helping out with the city of Gary, then they need to promote it, because I'll tell you what, with it not being promoted and advertised, it doesn't give everybody in the surrounding communities a good opinion of what U.S. Steel should be doing or shouldn't be doing. If they're doing it, let's know about it.
I agree with you. And I think that when you look at U.S. Steel, the immense size that facility is. When you drive down the toll road or you get off onto a surface street in Gary, it seems to me they could do a lot more in making it look more inviting and more attractive. I mean, I get it; it's a steel mill, but you go to Pittsburgh, you go to the Pennsylvania area where steel making is prevalent, and their facilities don't look like U.S. Steel Gary Works. It's far nicer.
Cleveland Cliffs has done a lot to beautify their facilities.
Yeah, I mean, U.S. Steel doesn't do a lot to maintain its properties. You're right about that. Cleveland Cliffs does a much better job than U.S. Steel. And again, if you go to other steel-making facilities in the U.S., they don't look as decrepit and as worn out and as just weed-infested, overrun properties like you see in Gary.
But when you're talking about the assessed value of residential increase versus industrial assessed value increase. Well, you really can't compare the two because, more people are coming into Indiana to buy homes, and they're building new homes because the market will dictate it.
It's all about
not everybody's
demand.
going out to buy a refinery.
Well, it's all about demand, right? There's
Yeah.
more demand. There's more demand for refining capacity in the U.S. than there ever has been in the past 50 years. So oil refineries, actually, especially one that was rebuilt about 10 years ago for the price of about $4.5 billion, would be a very valuable commodity right now, would it not?
Yeah, but how many people are in the market to look to buy a refinery?
Well, Shell Oil for one. Shell's looked at buying the whole company. So again, your point's well taken, but you also have to look at the alternative, which is that there is a market for selling an oil refinery. Selling a steel mill, maybe not so much, but an oil refinery, yes. Soap plants, oil or corn processing plants, paper plate manufacturing companies. All of these companies in Northwest Indiana all pay a disproportionate share of taxes compared to other states and other areas in the United States, largely because the way they're assessed on their value, and that does cause a problem.
Agreed.
It does.
Now-
And the worst is NIPSCO because, again, Indiana has such a contrived system. I cannot find a actual definition of what NIPSCO pays as far as its total taxes and how it's derived for all their utility runs. And utility corridors in every other state. In the state of Florida, just as an example, I looked it up since I was down there, state of Florida taxes utility corridors just like any other piece of property.
Well, as it should be. As it should be. Now, the last thing before I get up,
Yes.
the last thing I want to bring up before I get up on is look at the amount of tax revenue that comes from Lake and Porter County that goes downstate. How much of that do we get back?
Oh, almost none. I mean, look, if you go down to Indianapolis and you look at the city and you look at the county and you look at that area and how beautiful it is, we paid for it. Historically, we've paid for it. I mean,
sure.
Indianapolis is generating its own tax revenue, but historically, they spent our money to make Indianapolis what it is now. So you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I mean, we probably paid for a good portion of I-69 to be run through, that they just put through.
We've paid for an awful lot down there. White River State Park, we paid for that. We paid for the canal, a lot of the improvements. By the way, this is WJLB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM in Hammond, Indiana, 7 a.m. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's great. So when people go to the ballot box and they go to vote for their elected officials that are representing them downstate, I think they really need to reevaluate instead of being a mindless sheep and pushing the party ticket. They need to look at each individual office.
I agree with you, and that was what was so great about having Lonnie Randolph and Dan Dernelk on here. So you had Dan, who is a Republican, Lonnie, who's a Democrat. They work together. They co-sponsor bills together. They have the best interests. Dan Dernell, you have to admit, he has the best interests of Northwest Indiana. He did not vote for SB 1. He didn't vote for some of the things that were passed this last legislative session. He bucked his party. So we've got decent legislators up here. The problem is the sheep you're talking about are downstate. Okay, they all get in line. They all vote no matter what the issue is. They vote however they're told to vote, and there lies the problem. We don't vote for those people.
It's not just downstate though, Tom. It's around here too. Locally, there's a lot of people that, I just have to push the straight party ticket and I'm good. They need to take that option off the ballot.
I agree.
For every election.
You know what? That's a really great suggestion. Let's get rid of the straight party ticket. Let's make people actually have to do what you and I do, which is go in and vote for each race individually. Don't vote because the person's a Democrat or a Republican. Vote because that person is the person that you feel would best represent you or do the best job in that office. I totally agree. We should get rid of the straight party option.
Absolutely.
Hey, thanks so much for calling.
All right, you have a good day, sir.
You as well. 845-1100 is the number. We're going to take a quick break, so now's a good time to call in. And you're listening to the Morning Call on WJLB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, the TuneIn app. Jed TV and YouTube Live. We're going to be right back after these commercial announcements. News again. Tomorrow is Lynette's birthday. So happy birthday, Lynette. And it is not a Hallmark. It's not a Hallmark birthday. It's not a 21st. So it's a little bit more subdued. But nonetheless, happy birthday to you a day early. So congratulations. And looking at traffic right now, 7 o'clock hour. Again, we're just taking a quick look at Illinois because the problems on the Dan Ryan have not subsided. And now they've basically extended all the way into the Bishop Ford back to about 130th. So if you're on the Bishop Ford or the Dan Ryan, you're really not going to go very fast, very well anywhere. Northwest Indiana, the toll road, I-65, 80, 94 all look good. 294 looks okay. Again, you can take the Skyway in to Chicago, but as soon as you get off the Skyway, you're going to be stuck in traffic, and there's just no way around it. It backs up all the way now down into the interchange, the so-called Circle interchange in downtown. The Stevenson, the Eisenhower, and the Kennedy are now showing backups as well. 294 looks pretty decent, so that's probably your best route around the city. With that, we'll go to the birthday girl herself, and she can give traffic.
Morning, everyone. Today we're at 67 degrees with highs of 70 and lows of 60. Should be not as warm today with a stray shower. Cloudy this morning, then intervals of clouds and sunshine this afternoon. And tonight we'll be having clouds breaking with a couple of showers. Tomorrow on Thursday we'll be having highs of 72 and lows of 54 with clouds and breaks of sun. And should be breezy with a couple of showers. And then Friday we'll be having highs of 79 and lows of 55. And should be comfortable with plenty of sunshine.
There you go. Yeah, it's supposed to be a pretty nice weekend, so get out and enjoy it because there's going to be just a few more weeks of summer, and then we're going to be in the solid fall in Northwest Indiana. 845-1100 is the number to call. We've been talking a little bit about the taxes in Northwest Indiana and the state of Indiana, and to me, it's remarkable that people have this idea that we're going to get these great big that we're getting tax relief. We're not getting tax relief. What they're going to do is take the money, leave it in your left pocket, but take more out of your right pocket. And that's what Senate Bill 1 or Senate Enrolled Act 1 actually provides in the state of Indiana. We've got a couple of callers, so let's go to those callers. Good morning. You're on the air.
Yeah, hi, Tom. I heard you guys talking about the ability of heavy industry to self-assess.
Yes.
And, that, of course, that led to, 1858, HB 1858, I think it was, that dumped all the levy on the homeowners around the northern end of Lake County.
Yeah, and it hasn't stopped. It hasn't stopped, and that's what's really interesting is this study basically shows that the amount of taxes being paid, the tax burden in Lake County, 60% of the tax burden is now on residential property.
Right. Of course, you got to blame the politicians for that one. Mervan Sr. admitted at a meeting here in Whiting that he's the one that screwed it up, and he wanted to get reelected because he said since he screwed it up, he knew how to straighten it out. But anyway, as far as this heavy industry here, the thing you got to remember is the reason for cities in the first place is people came off the farms, people came to the cities hundreds of years ago or even more because of these jobs. If it wasn't for this heavy industry around here, what would Lake and Porter County look like? I remember years ago, 50, 60 years ago, when the Calumet region, the entire Calumet region was heavy industry. And
I remember it as well. I remember the amount of industry being substantially more than what we have now as a kid. You're right about that. But my point is look, I'm not faulting the industry. I'm faulting the politicians for creating a process that has basically transferred the amount of tax being paid by industry from 10 years ago basically has been now transferred to the backs of residents. And we live here, and you and I live up in Northwest, up in the Whiting Robertsdale area, and we have to smell a lot of things. We have to see a lot of things that we don't want to see. And so, the argument is also can be made that those industries are very detrimental to the way of life in Northwest Indiana and to our property values, and then they're getting tax cuts and we're not. That's a problem.
No doubt about it. But the thing you got to remember, like I say, I remember back in the 60s, 50s, 70s, people, there was money in this area. It was dirty, grimy, but there was pride in this area. People were proud that they worked in those mills. The guys that only had a high school education could buy a new home and support a family, have a car.
Do you remember when the steel mills and the oil refineries would let out and you'd see all the guys riding their bikes home through the neighborhoods?
Oh yeah, I remember the stories about the retirees at the White Castle waving to people going to and from work.
Yep.
But the thing you got to remember is dirty and as nasty as it was, and I grew up in the shadow of a steel mill, and we had soot all over our sill. We never saw any kind. And our idea of an exotic bird was a robin, and But the thing of it is there was pride in this area. People were maintaining their homes. There was beautiful suburbs here, and that's all gone. And you cannot have a major community, a city, without. You have to have a beating heart of jobs, good paying jobs. And you might not like heavy industry or anything like that, but let's face it, to this day, U.S. Steel, Cleveland Cliffs, BP, the money that they bring into this area here supports a whole lot of people here, supports a whole lot of lifestyles. They're never going to be heaven. And I always did say that we got two choices in this area. You could have dirt, grime, and money, or you could have poverty, drugs, and crime.
Well, and we've got some of those as well. But I think because the drug problem basically has nothing to do with socioeconomic background. In fact, drugs are quite prevalent in well-to-do communities. But what bothers me is the fact that again, the state legislature has come up with this Ponzi scheme or this ploy that they're going to take money out of one pocket or they're going to leave money in one pocket but take more money out of your other pocket, and then they're telling you that they're giving you tax breaks, and at the same time, the amount of tax that's being paid by industry has gone down 6%, where the amount of tax is increased dramatically on residential. And that seems problematic. I mean, it does. Your property value is based on market price now, okay, an adjusted market price, which I think is fair. If you can sell your home for $200,000, then it should be valued at $200,000. But then to go and value other properties, commercial properties, industrial properties at these reduced values is wrong. And I think that you have to come up with a system that's fair to everybody. That's what I'm saying. So I don't disagree about your argument that the jobs that those facilities create are important. They are, but I also find it interesting that the majority of people that work at BP, for example, don't live in Whiting. They live in Porter County. They live in South County. So some of the arguments, well, it's creating good paying jobs, yes, but not for the immediate local community. And I just think that they need to pay that the process, again, not faulting the industry, faulting the government, who's created a process that seems to be a little bit unfair when it comes to who's paying the taxes in Northwest Indiana.
Well, that's true, but the other side, and I agree with you 100%. Our politicians here, they pretty much sold out their constituents on this, and I'm disappointed in Mike Braun that I understand why he's doing what he's doing, because he wants people to actually start to tighten their budgets. But the problem is, like you say, they're just going to move that burden on the local government, and they're going to raise taxes on the people that are really, and a lot of them are in no position to be paying higher taxes.
So I went through and I read a bunch of his speeches, and he gives a big story about how we're going to make people tighten their belts. We're going to make local government and cities and towns and school districts and everybody else tighten their belts, and it sounds great. But then when you And he says, and to do it, we're going to give our hardworking Hoosiers, is what he the way he speaks. We're going to give our hardworking Hoosiers, a reduction in their tax rate, and it sounds great. And again, if somebody says to you, hey, your tax bill is going to go down by $300 a year, that sounds pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your property tax is going to go down. There's a guy named David Boteroff. Look him up. He is the CEO of the Indiana Counties Association. And he has this whole online explanation to his members that I was able to access, where he says this is the greatest thing because we're going to give people a discount on their property tax so that when they get their big property tax bills twice a year, they're not so upset. Because instead we're going to take $25 or $30 extra every 2 weeks out of their pocket to pay for it. And he says it. He actually says it in writing. That he's just going to go and he's going to go and take, or that the state is going to take more money from you, but because it's not going to have the sticker shock when you open up that tax bill. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't have an escrow, I don't have a mortgage, so I have to pay my tax bills directly. And, I get that big shock in the spring and the big shock in the fall, right?
Right.
So this head of Indiana County says this is a great formula that Braun's come up with because you're going to have less of a shock there, and then we're just going to take another $25 to $30 every 2 weeks out of the pockets of everybody in the state of Indiana to pay for it. And it's like, wait a minute, you're taking $25 every 2 weeks from me, and you add that up, that's $600 or $700 to replace the $300 that you just gave me back. So my net loss is $300 and some bucks.
Yeah, it's sort of like what they did with the water bills. When the Clean Water Act came through, Bill Clinton championed. Of course, that led to billions of dollars that the water facility, the districts had to actually upgrade. So that was they sat for 15, 20 years before they decided to start passing that on to the consumers. So they tried to use this little psyop on you by sending you a bill twice a month instead of once a month. So people didn't understand that their bill just doubled.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's right. And you know what? People are like, oh yeah, my bill didn't go up. Yeah, it went up. It doubled because now you're getting a bill every month instead of every other month.
But and again, like you say, what's going to happen at the local level? You're going to get hammered with local taxes, wheel taxes, taxes on groceries, gas taxes, or whatever they can levy.
We're going to get. We already have. Indiana has a 51.7 cent per gallon gas tax. 51.7 cents. It's amongst the highest in the Midwest in the United States. Then you have utilities that have unbelievable utility rates have gone up. You and I have talked about that before. But now I find out that in Florida and in other states, Ohio, other states tax their utilities who own property. They tax them at a reasonable rate. Indiana says, oh, no, we're going to give them a discounted rate so they can basically charge you more money. And by the way, if they want to look at package reactors, they can go ahead and study it, and you have to pay the full cost of it. You and I have to pay the full cost.
Right.
So it's like we never win. And again, Mike Braun's made it great. It sounds great. Hammond's going to tighten its belt. The mayor of Hammond's already announced he's got a hiring freeze. And people say, good, we need that hiring freeze, and we can cut out some of the fat. And you're right, you can go through Hammond's budget, and you can find places to cut. Do you need an assistant department head for every single department? Probably not. But at the end of the day, you can't cut enough money out of Hammond's budget to make up for the shortfalls that are about to occur unless you start adopting all of these other taxes. So, we'll put a wheel tax on. There's $25 or $50. We'll put a tax on food and beverage. There's, just a little bit you pay as you go. It's not going to be a huge amount. We're going to have these local income taxes. It's going to be 1 or 2%. It's not going to be that much, but it all adds up. And it all adds up to offset the big $300 smoke and mirror cut that Governor Braun pushed through and makes it sound like he's done his part to control the cost of spending, and he's not.
Yeah. Well, it's great for rural Indiana where counties don't have a heavy burden of expenditures as an urban area like here.
Right.
But it hammers the urban areas here. And again, it's not right. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's fair. But the thing you got to remember about industry is each one of those jobs inside the refinery probably supports about 3 or 4 or 5 jobs outside the refinery.
I think it's even more than that. I think the ratio is almost 20 to 1. And look, again, not faulting the refinery, I'm faulting the tax structure. That's the issue. That's the issue.
Right.
Hey, thank you so much for calling.
All right, Tom.
Have a great
Take
day.
Care.
845-1100. We've got some more callers. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning, Tom. It's Mont calling from Indianapolis this morning.
Mont, how are you?
The rally conference.
The streets are paved with gold down there. Just kidding.
Well, there might be for a few Northwest Indiana companies. I helped coach Sam and Peter for Jet TV. I think they look pretty good compared to the competition. They didn't even know they were going to be in the competition until like a week ago. So they were an alternate, and then someone dropped out, and now they have a shot at some big money for
That's
Jet
fantastic.
TV. So.
People don't realize. I mean, what you've done, the programs that you run here at Purdue, are phenomenal, and they've draw your competition, for example, on new innovative ideas draws individuals not just from Northwest Indiana but from all over the nation now.
Yeah, okay. I'm not going to I don't want to brag or anything.
You do a great job, Mike. You deserve a lot of credit.
But also just like making sure that the homegrown innovations understand what they are. I mean, when I first started talking to Jim and Sam, they're like, sports is pure and beautiful and wonderful. And it's like, that's not really what the investors want to hear, guys. How much money are you going to make them? What's your revenue?
Right.
How much is it going to scale this to, the whole state, to the nation? They needed to learn that. And I think they did finally discover oh yeah, this is about a business. Yeah, exactly. So I think they're starting to understand that. But anyway, it'll be interesting. It's about to start here soon. So I just wanted to call because you're talking about, the valuations of houses in the area. And I just thought, one of the things that I haven't heard yet this morning is the amount of private equity companies coming in and buying up private family homes. It's up to 25% in certain metropolitan markets, including Chicago and Northwest Indiana. That has a major impact on valuations.
You're absolutely right. It creates basically kind of a false demand, if you will, in the short term.
Yeah.
They buy up all these homes. They're renting them. And, we've talked for many years about, the care of a rental property versus an occupied owner property when it comes to single family residence. And there is a difference. You see better care when it's a complex, if you will, a rental complex rather than individual homes. But Northwest Indiana, I think the amount of rental properties in communities like Whiting and Hammond are, somewhere in the 30 percentile range. To me, it does have some real problems. You're absolutely right. And you don't, again, the people who live in a rental property don't have the same commitment that you have when it's your property.
You don't have the commitment to the home. You don't have the commitment to the neighborhood. You don't have the commitment to the community or the schools or anything. You're not an owner in that community.
Right.
So I find myself at a real predicament because I find myself supporting Comrade Sanders in his Hope for Homeownership Act proposal. He's proposing a 15% tax on the sale price for all hedge funds and private equity companies buying single-family homes. And I really think that would really stop all this predatory pricing out of people. I mean, this generation right now, graduating from college, graduating from trade schools, they're going to have a really hard time buying homes. And, I just think that this might be one place where, Republicans and Democrats can come together and say, hey, you can go ahead and invest in anything you want. Just don't price us out of housing here in the United States or price us out of housing anywhere.
No, you're right about it, Mont. The cost of buying a home is making it unattainable for many many individuals that are entering the workforce. I mean, it's going to be impossible. Lynette, is young. She's got a great life ahead of her and great career and all kinds of opportunities. But what she's going to be able to make versus what the cost of a home is makes it almost impossible for her or Matt or Joe or Adriana or all the other people that we know that are associated with WJOB. That generation is going to have a tough time buying homes because the cost is making it prohibitive for them to be able to buy a home based on their income, even though they have, they're college graduates and they have, exciting careers ahead of them. The cost is just growing exponentially for a single family home. And in part, it's because of all these large property management firms buying up properties.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to call in and put my 2 cents in, but I got to run.
By the way,
have a great day.
I should mention this. It just reminded me, since you called and you're talking about the next generation, I should point out to listeners this morning, my son Tom got his results for the bar. He passed, so he'll be sworn in October. So I do want to congratulate my son.
Great.
So, yep, absolutely.
I actually shared that information that your son might look for a law office in the new Roberts Impact Lab with with Dr. Kean and Dr. Latif, and they said, well, let's look at a proposal. So if you want to have him send us a proposal,
going to have him contact
take a look
you.
at it.
I'm going to have him contact you. Hey, thanks
We're
so much.
We're moving in next week.
Oh, excellent. All right, great hearing from you, Mont. Thanks so much. 845-1100, we've got more callers. Good morning, you're on the air.
Hey, Tom. It's Dave.
Hey, Dave.
Hey, thanks for bringing up SB1. It's going to be a big deal when it finally comes to fruition, and we're all going to feel it, no doubt about it.
And it's a shell game. It's a shell game, Dave. And you live in Gary, and you know what? Yeah. Look, you part of the reason why you can live where you live and enjoy what you have is certainly the tax revenues from big industry like U.S. Steel, and I'm not faulting them, but SB1 kind of hides the fact that there's a lot of benefits to industry, and industry in Indiana is already getting massive benefits on their assessed value. And Mike Braun is just such a con artist because he's out there saying, I'm going to give I'm going to give working Hoosiers a tax break. I'm going to give you guys up to $300 off your tax bill. And boy, it sounds good. And then I read this column at your recommendation, by the way, to dig into this. So I read David Boderoff, who is head of the Indiana Counties Association, and he almost, and next week I'll read it verbatim on the air because he almost laughs about, what a bunch of suckers the residents of Indiana are because they don't know that they're about to get a $300 tax break and then pay more taxes in the process, but they're not going to know about it.
Yeah, it's counter. It's counter to the the whole tax and spend Democrat stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I always looked at it. It was the tax and spend Democrats, then it was the borrow and spend Republicans, right? So it's they're gonna get you one way or the other. But there was also one of your callers mentioned about voting in Indiana, and there's one thing that I've always, and I kind of get it, and you're into this, that we're a closed primary. There are some states, I think there's only 12 left that have closed primaries. I've been investigating a semi-closed primary. So what that means is national elections, you could vote for anyone you want, but municipal elections, it's a closed primary. And I get that because, when you start talking about a city council seat, it would be very easy to manipulate and vote for the weakest person of, pick your party, right?
Right.
But yeah, I've really been investigating semi-closed primaries, and I hope somebody downstate, might start that drumbeat because I think it would really bring a lot more voters out. Because it's just who wants to declare, right? Especially there's not much sunlight between Republicans and Democrats.
At least locally,
in
there isn't.
Northwest Indiana.
Yep.
Right, yeah, Northwest Indiana. I mean, you got Lonnie and you got Dan there, two people I respect, and have very, very similar views. You know,
You're absolutely right. There's a lot more. There's a lot more in common between them than there is
absolutely.
differences. And there are plenty of Democratic office holders in Northwest Indiana who share some very similar views to Republicans on national issues and individual issues, but they've got to play the party line right now. And I agree with you. I think open primaries and getting rid of the straight ballot vote, I think makes sense.
Yeah, and also it's just this $300, and that might sound like a lot of money, but when we're still getting hammered on local referendums because of the 1, 2, 3 test, I think we all knew that was going to come to fruition eventually, right?
Right.
The 1, 2, 3, and it is. It's coming home to roost right now. So 300 might sound like something, but in the whole scheme of things, it's not. It's next to nothing, and it is. You're right, and I think I'm so glad you brought this up because it is a shell game, and people need to be just a little more aware of what's going on. So again, I just want to call and say thanks for bringing this up.
No, I'm glad that you brought up the subject. And Dave, I think that for the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna continue to focus on tax issues. Again, why is it that NIPSCO gets such tremendous tax breaks on the value of their properties versus anyone else? I mean, if you want to talk about fairness, NIPSCO owns a huge amount of property in Northwest Indiana, but their property is taxed less than even, say, U.S. Steel or BP. So
look at U.S. Steel. I mean, where I live in Gary.
Yeah.
I mean, when they went to the self-assessed, which, I think we all wish we could be self-assessed, right? But that was kind of the sweetheart deal. We'll give you the 1, 2, 3, but we want this. And just kind of to put it in perspective, Gary is losing right around $8.5 million a year because of the self-assessment. And U.S. Steel's argument, now Nippon Steel, we have to change that lexicon, right? Their argument is, well, the property would be worthless if it wasn't for us being here. But you are there.
Right.
But you are there. It's like if your house wasn't there, right?
Right. If
but
my house wasn't there, the property wouldn't have the value that it has. You're right.
Exactly.
Well,
again,
we vote in these people, and Mike Braun, I never liked him. I could not support him as governor. He comes in and he sells us this bill of goods. He's going to give hardworking Hoosiers he's going to give us this big tax break. In fact, I don't know if you read this, but early on, he wanted the tax break to show up on only one of your two bills. So in other words, let's say your bill's $4,000 a year. The first bill would give you actually, he wanted the second bill, the one in November, would give you the $300 break. So you'd see the $300. He didn't want the $150 and $150. But that's the way it's going to read. So you're going to get a total of $300 off. But they've authorized basically the local income tax total to go up to 2.9%. So it's a 1.5.
Wait for the county. Just wait for the county income tax. I told all my friends, I'll leave you with this. Everyone's going to miss Holcomb when he's gone because that guy was good to Northwest Indiana.
Yep. And we're going to pay for it, and people don't realize it, and it's on the horizon. So, Dave, thanks for bringing up the idea.
Work.
Take care.
Take care.
845-1100, we have another caller waiting. Okay, why don't we take a quick break then? You're listening to the morning call on WJOB 1230 AM, 104.7 FM, the TuneIn app, JED TV, and YouTube Live. We'll be right back after these commercials. We've been talking about the change in tax structure in the state of Indiana. So if you have an opinion, give us a call at 845-1100. But we should begin by talking again about traffic and weather. So Northwest Indiana looks fairly decent. Not a lot of problems in the area. But when you get across the line into Illinois, it gets to be pretty darn frightful. Traffic is really, really backed up now. The Ryan and the Bishop Ford, basically, it's showing that it's a continuous backup from downtown all the way to 130th. So you're going nowhere. The Skyway is actually starting to show a backup now. Lakeshore Drive doesn't look too great either. Northwest Indiana, 8094. The toll road, I-65, Client Avenue, all pretty clear. 294 still looks pretty decent if you're trying to get around the city. But if you're on any other route, the Stevenson, the Eisenhower, and the Kennedy are all pretty backed up as well. So not a great day for driving. But again, at least the weather's nice. And with that, it is one day off from her birthday, Lynette.
Morning, everyone. Today we're at 68 degrees with highs of 70 and lows of 60. It's not going to be as warm today, but with a stray shower. Cloudy this morning and then intervals of clouds and sunshine this afternoon. And tonight we'll have clouds breaking with a couple of showers. Tomorrow and Thursday we'll be having highs of 72 and lows of 54 with clouds and breaks of sun. Should be breezy with a couple of showers. And then Friday we'll be having highs of 79 and lows of 55 and should be comfortable with plenty of sunshine.
It'll be a nice weekend, folks, to get out there and enjoy the weather. It's supposed to be in the 80s, so kind of a nice weekend. And next week we'll make Lynette report on what she did for her birthday. So she's like, yeah, okay, fine. I can just turn your mic off. 845-1100, and we've got callers. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Tom.
Good morning.
You know, I appreciate, again, the issue-oriented radio. Really do.
Thank
you.
Say
that. Some people may just think it's a offhanded comment, but it's a true statement. I really appreciate it. You're talking taxes as usual. Some of the points that are seem to get missed in this county. We blame U.S. Steel for their self-assessment. It's what those downstate Republicans did, and to an extent that's true. But I just want to point out, like the one caller earlier mentioned the two bills, 1851, 1858, and 1902. Every single one of our state legislators at the time voted in favor of the tax break to our big industry in this area. And it constantly gets forgotten. And I just had to point that out because I listen to a lot of stuff and I hear some truths and a lot of things are left out and we blame this and blame the Republicans, blame the Democrats. I think we could all hold this true. It's usually an elected official that really sticks it to us. Can we at least admit that?
Absolutely. You're right on. Okay, they all voted for those two bills, and as a result now, we have a shift in Lake County where the tax burden has become 60% of the tax burden is now single-family residents. So the non-residential and the commercial and industrial are paying total 40% of the tax burden. So 60% is now paid by residential. They've increased the value of our properties tremendously because they went to market value, but then they gave everybody else all these breaks and all these so-called confidential formulas and self-assessments and self-reports. I mean, they voted for this, and it's Democrats and Republicans alike that did this. And now we've got a real flim-flam man who basically comes in, says he's going to be governor, and he's going to give, again, over and over, every time I read one of his comments over the weekend, I heard about, he's looking out for the hardworking Hoosiers. Right. He's looking out for hardworking Hoosiers because he's going to give you $300 in your left pocket, and he's going to take $600 to $800 out of your right pocket to pay for it.
It's like you said, it's a shell game. It's a total. Don't get me wrong. I agree with everything that was said this morning. I'm just adding to it and not letting us forget those little details. It's not just the Republicans. It's not just the Democrats. And waste. That's another one that kills me. I travel to Texas. I talk to elected officials. I have them in my family. I have some that work for the Republicans in that state. They waste just as much, if not more, than our so-called tax and spend Democrats. Even locally, Tom, you know as well as I, when meetings and conferences and the like are set up, they're set up by our state, who's run by what party? The Republicans, correct?
Yes.
I've said for people who attend these conferences, in business You have an agenda first. You decide what is the conference going to be about. Do I need to send section managers from Inland Steel Company to this conference? When it comes to government, they don't even know the subject of their conference, but they already know they're going to send employees. That's government. That's management mistake. In our case, management is downstate Republicans that are wasting our tax dollars money by sending people to conferences before they even know what they are. Could you imagine as a business person, you're going to a conference. What's it going for? I don't know what it's about, but I'm going. That's what government does. And that's what Republicans are doing as well as Democrats. But if you bring these things up, well, you're just picking on the little guy. No, like a couple of weeks ago, I heard one of the gentlemen say, so many people get on here and say, we need to cut this. Like the one man said, the majority of the people in our county working in these offices are doing their job.
They're doing their job and they're not getting paid a lot of money. And
correct.
And look, here's an example. I read a report. It's called the Greenfield Reporter from downstate. And they interview the superintendent of schools in Hancock County, which is a fairly well-to-do county. And he says, yes, SB 1's going to have a negative impact on the amount of money that we get from local income tax, or local property tax, rather. And he said, we're going to have to look at other options. We're going to have to look at local option income tax. He said, but we're also going to have to look to the state and federal government for more tax dollars to make up the difference.
Right.
Who the hell pays the state and federal taxes? Is this guy off his rocker?
Exactly.
He's talking about, well, we'll get money from the federal government. Okay, let's just increase the federal deficit. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. And this is where it gets frustrating because you hear the internal bickering, and I just come to the conclusion they're all in on the same cabal. It's the same game, man. It's just who's in power at the specific time, and then it's my job. If I'm out, like Thurm used to say, politics is pretty simple. Those who are in want to stay in, and those who are out want to get in. It's simple, man. But it's frustrating when we forget the details of these arguments that you hear. And it's not faulting people. You were talking about redistricting. Well, do you remember when, let's be honest, State Rep 12 went from Whiting to Munster?
Yes,
you remember that, right?
I sure do. Yes, I do.
Was that right? Come on, you know it wasn't.
No,
but see,
of course it wasn't.
But if you bring it up, well, you're against blah, blah, blah. You see what I'm saying? And then when people would talk about, they love AI, right? Here's my point. AI could generate our redistricting, put it in. Engineers know it. Your son used to be an engineer. Talk to us who have mechanical and or electrical or just an engineering background. They could do that redistricting on a grid, on a map. It's not that hard. But see, they don't want the contingent, cities and towns. That's how it should be. Right. Tight-knit, contingent areas should be within a district.
Right.
No, they don't want to do that.
Instead, they gerrymander it so that it benefits whichever party that they're trying to benefit. And you're absolutely right. Look, everything you're saying is correct. You look at here, and I don't want to bring up Florida too much, but I was down there last week again. I've talked to some of the people that are in municipal management down there, and they have a city manager. They have kind of a unique structure. Their city council actually are city commissioners. The commissioners responsible for their district and the activities that go on in their district. And they have taken politics completely out of local government down there. And you see when you talk to the city manager, and I've met with him a few times, he says, look, we don't have any politics whatsoever involved in government. We try and keep it out of government as much as possible.
Right.
And you do see a lot more efficiency when it comes to the way it's structured. And I'm not faulting Northwest Indiana.
No.
I grew up here. This is my home. I love the area. But some of the things that are done here aren't done in other areas of the nation, and there are far more efficiencies.
They're more efficient, Tom. But we're so, you would mention Chicago, and you have this false notion of we're the city at work. We're blue collar. We work hard, we play hard. And then, like you alluded to, that's what you call working hard? No, when I talk about working hard, you ever been to Texas? You ever seen the streets in Texas? clean. Florida, clean.
Yeah, they power wash the main sidewalks in Florida now.
Right, exactly. And the thing is, Tom, it's other areas do things right, even locally. I hear these local mayors, going to different cities and towns. Why don't you, if you're a local mayor, you just get in office, why don't you go to a community that's doing things right?
Well, I'll tell you what, I think just for beautification that Mayor Copeland ought to hold a meeting for every other mayor and town council in Northwest Indiana to see what he's done on Columbus Drive.
I concur.
I mean, you've driven it. It's amazing. It's unbelievable. You feel like you're in some tourist destination.
Right. But he's a neat freak.
He is a neat freak.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Anthony Copeland is known as a neat freak. He absolutely he has.
That's a good thing. I'm not knocking it because I seen him when he first got in office. They were how the weeds on the street that grow up in between the asphalt. They were burning that out, man.
It's the only community that you don't see that. It's the only community that you don't see the weeds growing up. You see he is a clean freak, and it's to his benefit, not to his detriment. He makes
100%.
sure that things are done. He is getting things done. But then you go to Chicago, and my God, what a disaster it is.
It's a disaster. And the thing is, Tom, what's frustrating, it's not that hard. Like the gentleman said earlier, people came here, he said high school education. Trust it, I had people in my family, they didn't even get to the high school. I'm talking about the 1900s. But they had pride in their home. They had pride in where they worked. They had pride in their community. People say, shop local. I tell people all along, my parents didn't know anything but shopping local.
Look, back in the day, you didn't expect the city to pull the weeds in front of your house. You pulled the weeds yourself.
100%. 100%.
The weeds didn't grow up in the sidewalks back in the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s in Northwest Indiana because people got out there and they pulled the weeds themselves.
Right.
Now we wait for the city of Hammond or the town of Munster or the town of Cherville to show up and pull those weeds and trim those weeds. That's your responsibility.
It's your, and Tommy, you have these young people, even in $400,000+ homes, they're so lazy to, if leaves gather at the drainage for the street, they won't clean them.
Nope.
It's government's job to do that, and it's younger. If you're 95 years old, I don't want you going out there. But I'm talking about people in their early 20s. Come on. But see, it's government. I need government. Call the city. Call the town. It's not my job. It's too hot. I see it.
We
all
expect
over.
entitlement. We have
all over. Thank you, Tom.
We have this idea of entitlement, and that's the problem. Absolutely. Thanks for calling. 845-1100 is the number. Do we have another caller? One of the, I mentioned before this interview that I read on SB1 from the superintendent of schools in Hancock County. I'm not picking on the guy. I don't know him. But, he talks about, we'll just get, we'll get revenues from other sources. So on top of the fact that the big reduction in your property taxes, the $300 deduction that you're going to now get, being a shell game because they're going to increase the local income tax, you've got schools in Indiana who think they're going to just get the money from the state and the federal government. Well, if they get the money from the state and federal government, who pays those taxes? We do. So it's a shell game, folks. It's just crazy. It is really, we have done this to ourselves. We have created a process that basically, again, has shifted the tax burden from industry and commercial to the residents of the county, especially Lake County. We have bought hook, line, and sinker this message from a salesman, if you will, Mike Braun, who tells us he's going to give us a $300 a year discount on our property taxes, but they're going to increase probably double the cost. Oh, we have Bighorn. Big Truck must think it's Jed's here. Anyway, he's going to increase the the taxes that you pay overall by $600 or $800 to pay for the $300, so you're not getting a discount. It's crazy. And again, no offense to a guy named Dave Boderoff, but he wrote how much easier it's going to be to get people to agree to pay taxes when they're paying the local income tax, and it's $25 or $30 per paycheck versus that sticker shock that they get twice a year on property taxes. And that's what it's all about. So what they did was they didn't give you a discount. They just shifted the burden to other sources. When you talk about cutting the expenses of government, it's great. It sounds great. Again, I know the city of Hammond's budget. I know the city of Whiting's budget. I know East Chicago's. I've looked at budgets throughout Northwest Indiana, and sure, there's always some argument you can make. You could cut here, you could cut there. But as one caller mentioned last week, you could cut the cost at the county. But what are you going to do? You're going to cut out a bunch of $28,000 or $30,000 a year positions. Even if you cut 100 of them, you're going to save some money, but you're not going to save the kind of money that you need to save based on this new tax structure. 845-1100 is the number. We've got another caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Hey, how many people are on the Lake County payroll for benefits only that don't work there anymore? Like Peggy Catona's mother used to be for 15 or 20 years. And I'll wait for your honest answer, but I'll hang up.
Yeah. All right. So there are plenty of people that work at Lake County, but when you look at the cost of county government, it's all the other stuff that basically fits into the cost of county government that basically makes this whole entire structure and this whole entire restructuring of taxes not realistic. Again, you can go in and I said earlier this morning, you can take a look at the city of Hammond. Could you cut costs? Sure, you could probably cut out all the assistant department heads. So do you need an assistant department head for every? We've got a deadline ring. There we go. Can you cut out some assistant department heads? I suppose you could, and you'll save some money. But are you going to save the kind of money that basically this tax system is requiring? Or could you go back in and realize that the tax structure that we have is not a fair structure? You're charging people the value of their home for their property taxes, but then everybody else pays a dramatically discounted structure. You go and you throw out these ideas that we're going to give people a discount on their property taxes. We're going to give them $300, those hardworking Hoosiers. Say it with a little twang in your voice when you say it, so you sound just like Mike Brown. And then don't tell people, but we're going to allow local government to make up for that by adding a local income tax. And the local income tax can go up to 2.9%, so we pay 1.5 here. Let's kick in a wheel tax. Let's kick in a food and beverage tax. Let's increase the tax on hotel rooms. Those aren't paid by local people. We'll increase the tax there. And we're going to basically increase taxes in other ways to supplement the discount that we gave. And the net result, by everybody's estimation that I can find, is that SEA 1 is basically going to increase the amount of tax the average person pays in Lake County, Porter County, LaPorte County, or any other county in the state of Indiana. And to me, that's just that is just flim-flam politics. You tell people one thing, but you're giving them another. They think, wow, I'm going to get this discount. And then you go and you have the audacity at one point to even push that we're going to give the tax break near the election so that people really, really appreciate it. Don't put it on 2 tax bills, only put it on 1 so it looks really good. That didn't get passed. But it sounds great, okay? But we're really not bringing about good government. We're not bringing about thoughtful reductions in the way monies are spent by local government, whether it's the city or town or county. What we're really doing is we're creating just a false sense of we did something for you. I'm going to give you $300 and you're going to give me $600 back. Don't forget I gave you $300. And because the $600 I'm going to take from you in increments of $25 or $30 per paycheck. So it sounds great. In the meantime, you come up with no real support and no structure, no guidance for local communities to figure out how they're supposed to make up shortfalls. You basically put in new laws that restrain governments from doing certain things, and you basically again remind everybody, but don't forget, I gave you the $300 deduction on your taxes, and that's. Again, it's all about politics, folks. It's all about politics, and it's unfortunate. And we're going to pay the price in the next few years. It's kind of like 1858 and 1902. Those bills, we didn't know the details, and the devil was in the details, and now we found out that there were some real devilish details. Well, just wait. Let's take a quick break. You're listening to The Morning Call on WJOB, 1230 AM, 104.7 FM. This is WJOB in Hammond, Indiana, and we'll be right back. Back for the last half hour of the morning call this morning, and Jed's going to sit in. He's going to join me shortly. We're going to talk about things, but I do want to give you an update on traffic. It really has not improved much on the expressways in Chicago. I will say that the backup on the Bishop Ford has gotten a little bit better. It's probably north of about 120th now, but the Dan Ryan is just a disaster all the way in. The area expressways in Chicago look bad. Closer to home, 80-94 is still running pretty well. I-65, no big problems there, which is interesting because there's a lot of construction out there. And 80-94 on the toll road look pretty good. So there's traffic. Let's go to Lynette. And, hey, Jed, this is your chance to wish Lynette happy birthday because tomorrow is her birthday.
Happy birthday, Lynette. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
And I'm pretty sure it's Lynette, not Lynette, right?
Nope, other way around.
It's Lynette?
Yeah.
Why is Adriana telling me Lynette?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Well,
it gets everyone every time they read it.
Because it's got a TH on the end of it? Oh, well, cool. Well, happy birthday.
She told me how to pronounce her name. That's
are you 22 or 3 or 4? I guess I'm not supposed to ask
that. No, we're not. Yeah.
Okay.
It's not a Hallmark year, though. She's over 21.
All right. Today we're at 68 degrees with highs of 70 and lows of 60. It's not going to be as warm today, but with a stray shower. Cloudy this morning with intervals of clouds and sunshine this afternoon. And then tonight we'll be having clouds breaking with a couple of showers. Tomorrow on Thursday we'll be having highs of 72 and lows of 54 with clouds and breaks of sun. Should be breezy with a couple of showers. And then Friday we'll be having highs of 79 and lows of 55 and should be comfortable with plenty of sunshine.
Yeah, and this weekend is supposed to be in the mid-80s. It'll be the last weekend for people with a pool, so enjoy it while you can, because after this weekend I think things are going to go downhill. But Jed's here, and he was saying, did we get a lot of calls this morning about taxes? And we have. We've had full phone lines this morning, but I want to change things up a little bit and talk a little bit about Jimmy Kimmel's return last night and where late-night television is going. So good morning.
Hey, I always take the moment to thank you for what you do on Wednesdays. One of the callers the guy never calls me, I don't know why, but he's like, and he calls Kuziak, but he won't call me, and I forget his name, but he's like, I want to thank you for issues-oriented radio. And I knew what he meant. I mean, I just want to screw around, and that's what do you want?
You know what? Actually, the topic this morning was suggested by Dave Gurman last week, and he said, "Hey, would you mind talking about SB1 next week?" So I did, and it's just amazing because when I first heard about it, I thought this has got to be a shell game, and then after I read up on it and investigated it, I found out it truly is a shell game. But enough of that.
No, it is, and we've talked about it. I have talked about it more in relations to the schools than into the municipalities, but the amount of lower amounts of money that are coming to the various school districts I can't even tell you how many millions that I've heard for different school districts. You haven't felt it this year, but you're about to feel it for next year.
Right. Plus, the referendums, any referendums on additional funding now are going to be restricted to every other year instead of every year. So school districts are going to pay the biggest price, no doubt about it. There's also an additional transfer in SB1 to charter schools for funding. School districts generally are going to pay probably the biggest price for SB1. But I found it interesting that when I went online and I'm reading like the Indiana School Association or School Board Association, and you get this superintendent from Hancock County who says, that's okay, we'll just make it up with grants from the state of Indiana and the federal government. And I'm thinking, like, who do you think pays for those? I mean, so once again, if he's right, if that's how they're going to make it up, well, then you're going to take monies from the state and the federal government, and who pays those taxes? We do. So it's a transfer.
And it's also a question of access. Lynette, is my mic at the same level as everybody? I don't know.
His does seem a
little bit low, so go ahead and kick me some.
Yeah.
And but it's access. Now, in Hancock County, they have a lot of connections,
right,
and they could get a senator going to Washington, or they could get the state legislature to look at some special program they may have that needs funding, and they're going to be able to understand where all the funding is, and maybe they can make it up with some grants, but that's not the case for River Forest and Lake Station. They don't have any of those connections or that access.
They're going to look. It's going to hurt. It's definitely going to hurt local school districts. I saw two numbers. One said $840 million in reduced revenue statewide. Another one put it over $1.1 billion. So either way, it's a lot of money.
It's around $1 billion. And I talked to some of the people here at Lake Central, and they've always kind of been blessed with like a high residential tax amount of money that comes into them. And then all of a sudden they're going to slash that by millions of dollars. They're even going to slash Griffith by millions of dollars. Yeah. And it's kind of rough because it's at the exact same time that some of these school districts are getting some momentum.
Yeah, and it again, you're right. It comes at the worst possible time. It's going to have an impact, and there's not a lot of formula offered by the state right now to make up those costs, other than to say, well, just increase class size and cut costs, which sounds great, but in reality, what are you cutting out? We've got a caller. Good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Tom. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
Good. With this affecting the schools, tell me why every school's got to have an indoor practice facility now, or why they got to have a soccer field as well as a baseball field, and
well, it's all about competition. Look, I don't disagree with you that there has been a huge amount of money spent on sports facilities and all kinds of new schools, and people always point out school buildings don't teach students. It's not the age of the building, it's the quality of the education that happens in the classroom. You're right about that, but it also comes down to competition. People look to move into communities that offer those kinds of facilities. And so people, people get what they want, so to speak. They just don't want to pay for it.
So are you telling me my education would be better at Crown Point High School than Whiting High School?
No, I'm not. Actually, I'm not going to tell you that because the sports facilities are good in both locations. You've got better facilities than they have in Whiting. But I will, just as an example, I will tell you that if you track the progress and the careers of people who graduate from both schools, I think that would tell you a lot more about the quality of education than anything else. I know that Purdue used to keep a rate basically on the number of students that came from a district. Tom Kean actually shared this information with me years ago, that they would track what's the success rate of a student coming from, say, Whiting High School? What's the percentage of students that graduate from Whiting High School that graduate from Purdue in 6 years, for example? So I think they called it something like a consistency rate. Those are the kinds of things that I think say a lot about schools. But I also think that it comes down to the home that the student grows up in. I mean, I think that there's a lot to be said about parenting, and parents these days, too many of them want to blame the poor education of their son or daughter on everyone except themselves. I mean, I mentioned before, I'm very proud of the fact my son just got word that he passed the bar, no problem, and congratulations to him, and he graduated with honors from law school, and he graduated from honors when he was an undergrad with a chemistry degree, so he's a very bright kid. And I think part of it was the fact that his parents also instilled upon him the need to study and the importance of education. And that doesn't always happen in a lot of homes these days. And I don't care if you're in Crown Point, Whiting, East Chicago, Munster, Hammond, it doesn't matter. If the parents aren't making education important, then the kid's going to suffer.
Caller, what's your point?
I'd like to see the money put toward the teacher, the quality teacher in the classroom, and let's raise good young men and women. I don't give a rat's tomato about being on JED TV and it would put another knucklehead jock out there. Let's put some people that are going to be positive influences in the community once they leave those buildings.
So, are you arguing that the programs and the facilities don't mean anything in academia? That they might even be better off in like kind of crappy facilities?
I'll agree with what Tom said.
No, I'm asking you a question, and you're usually nice and direct here when you call in, and I'm asking you a question. Are you arguing for worse facilities for students?
No, I've seen some of the finest programs, run from some of the worst buildings in the country.
So is it because it's a bad building or in spite of the bad building?
In spite of.
Okay.
Put the quality teacher in the class. Do I get to finish?
Go ahead.
Put the quality teacher in the classroom and have the positive male and female role models in front of them, not out on the football field, man.
So hold on a second. Wait, let me take this.
All right.
So you're against athletic facilities, mostly. I mean, tell me exactly what you're against.
Are you going to let me answer, or are you going to keep cutting me off? Why do I need...
You do not tell me. You're asking me a question. Tell me what you're against.
Why do I need a soccer field and a football field?
Okay, you're against soccer fields and football fields. It's not a question. I asked you a question. You come back with a statement. All right? What are you against?
The redundancy in facilities.
So you're against what facilities?
Jed, I just said it. Can I make it?
What facilities? Academic or sports?
Why do I need both a soccer field and a football field?
Okay, it's a statement. You don't need a soccer field and a football field. Is that your statement or is that your question?
Right. Hold on.
No, listen, because you have called in and not been specific. It's like, I hate this, I hate that, but then you just ask questions. I want to know what you don't want.
Here, let me put it in a form you can understand, Jed. You don't need both a soccer field and a football field if you're looking at cutting expenses.
Okay, so you're against doubling up on a soccer. Munster has a soccer and a football field, and you're against that.
Absolutely.
And Crown Point has a soccer and a football field, and you're against that. Okay, but you see what happens here is that you look at, Tom is looking at the state legislature, right? And at the exact same time that they're going to cut millions of dollars from every district, they also said to the IHSAA that you have to allow people to transfer at any time that they want to transfer for athletic reasons or no reasons. So now you have set it up so that the schools have to compete for athletes and other students that might want to go to a school that has better facilities. They may not even play sports, but they may want to go to the one that has all this really nice stuff, and then they might leave one that doesn't have that. So the state legislature is basically said you got to go with less money, but it's going to be more competitive. So these things don't happen in a vacuum. There's a reason that people are investing in their facilities.
But I want to go back to an earlier comment that you made, which is about, you said you didn't give a rat's back end about sports. You wanted the role model to be, the teacher in the classroom. And look, I agree with you. We want to support teachers in the classroom, but I also don't want to discount the impact of athletics. All right. My son, in fact, told me this summer when he took the practice exam for the bar, he said, part of his ability to sit there and answer 200 questions, he said, Dad, he said, I have to say, my time playing football, my time playing sports helped give me that dedication that I needed to sit there and answer all those questions. The dedication of studying for the bar, of studying for law school. My daughter, who is a pretty good athlete, she talks about her experience at athletics, especially at the high school level, helped her. My brother Mark was a good athlete. I mean, he still talks about athletics helping him. My brother David, you didn't go swim with him, did you? Did you go swim with him?
I did.
You did. And so, my brother David, and he's a great swimmer, right? But he talks about the fact that swimming and his time in athletics, again, it laid the groundwork for that dedication and that commitment. So I wouldn't fault athletics by any means.
Tom, I have another comment. If we go back a little bit in history, I wouldn't have agreed in letting them switch schools. The LeBron James legislature. What happened to the kid that said, hey, you know what? I have a small school. We don't have everything, but I can help make this program better, and we can win. And
just do I want simplicity? I want it how it used to be. Yeah. And then you have people like Lynette and Adriana and Matt Kaufman and Joe Cimino that are coming in there, and they're like, I don't really care how it used to be. And so the simplicity factor that he's talking about has gotten me to the point where I can't even hear just overly simplified arguments.
But you can't just simplify everything. And actually, what we wanted to talk about, which was late night television, because I think that your point about the people wanting it the way it was is the basis for why I don't think late night talk shows are going to work in the future. Because I think the problem is you and I grew up with it, and we said, oh, Johnny Carson and all those guys, and we loved them, right? And we loved the replacements, David Letterman and Jay Leno. But late night television isn't working for most people anymore. Talk to Adriana, talk to Matt, talk to Joe, talk to Lynette. They're not watching broadcast television. They're basically, if they're doing anything, they're live streaming. They're watching Netflix. They're watching HBO Max. They're watching shows that they can start and stop. And they're really not interested in the whole talk show circuit anymore.
I agree with you.
I think that's where it's
But
dying.
that's happening. It's just not on ABC, NBC, all of that, because it's
Gutfeld's doing very well on cable.
Unbelievable. And Seth Rogen, I mean, that's late night TV taken to a podcast.
Right. But for broadcast television, it's a problem. And I've told you this off the air. I know, as you know, I know a number of people in Chicago news media, and they tell me that they're even struggling to make the 10 o'clock news work. I mean, when you go and you look at, MeTV that's running reruns of Carol Burnett, and they're making more dollars, their net revenue is better than somebody who's putting on a news broadcast. And younger generations, does Matt Kaufman get his news by sitting down and watching the 10 o'clock news? Because I can tell you right now, I've had the conversation with him on the air, and he says, no, I never watch it. He gets news. He knows. I mean, Matt's a very, very informed guy, right? He knows the news, but he gets it all through podcasts, through news apps, through all those kinds of things.
Paul Goddard.
Through Paul Goddard, absolutely.
And
yeah.
I applaud all of those. So I think what happens is a lot of, and I was guilty of this, is I want to put up a stop. Oh, local news, that still wins. Local live local talk, that still wins. It still wins in the morning here. Yeah. But Adriana said, Jed, we need to do this is all podcasts, and that will work. And what she has been able to do has astounded me. Sam Michael's like, dude, we need to build our own network outside of Facebook, because sometimes you come in the morning and they just have canceled your whole channel, and we have to build our own to block against that. And I'm like, man, that's kind of expensive, Sam. Well, he's down there right now talking to 2,000 right now this morning.
Yep.
So what you're really talking about is the acceptance of change.
Well, and that's just it. And acceptance of change in Northwest Indiana has some real historical challenges.
That's how you say it.
No, some real historical challenges. And I will go back to the fact that we are, kind of the center of the Rust Belt, right? And so change, and you know this and I know this, when we graduated from high school, okay, at least the majority of people that I graduated with went to work in the mill. They went to work in the oil refineries. They went to work in big industry, right? And you had plenty of friends that did the same thing. And then in the 1980s, the late 80s, they all started losing their job. Why? Because it wasn't a downturn in production. It was a change in philosophy. All of a sudden, they started putting in PLCs, programmable logic controllers,
like down the hall here,
and they put in and they started to put in computer systems, and they found out that they didn't need 32,000 people to make steel at what was then Inland Steel. They could do it with 8,000 people or 5,000 people at U.S. Steel. And what happened is an entire generation or two in Northwest Indiana was basically taught that change was bad. Change was bad. And now, a couple generations later, the newer generations, like our producers belong to, they're like, what are you talking about? Change is great. I mean, can't wait for change. When my son is on here, you ought to actually have my son on with you one day, because all Tom talks about is how you can make things so much better, and you can change, right? And he thinks what you're doing with Jed TV is awesome, because he says you're filling a need, you're filling a market, and it's all about change. All right, it's a change in the way we follow and we watch sports, and so he gets it. But in Northwest Indiana, you've got these generations, the baby boomers and the generations that followed, that are opposed to change. Because, once again, they learned that change always brought bad news. Oh, they're putting a computer in. Well, they're going to get rid of a ton of us. And that was the way they were raised.
Wait
and that's
a second.
the way they understood.
Lynette, are you listening to this? Or are you doing your homework? But that's got to be one of the most eloquent things you've ever said, because I never thought of it that way. That we have been taught that change is bad. And
it's true.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It's true. We were taught by experience that change was bad in Northwest Indiana. And there's actually a theory, there's a couple of books written about this, that especially the Rust Belt areas of the nation have been very reluctant to change, because they like the way things were. There's actually something called the consistency theory. Like, we like consistency in our lives. You want to wake up in the morning, you want to find the same, you want to find your hot coffee, right? You want to find the shower is going to be warm. You want all those things. And when it doesn't happen, it creates a level of what's called dissonance, and you want to go back to the way things were. And in Northwest Indiana, because of our experiences in the 80s and 90s, we have a tougher time with change than anywhere else.
Lynette, what do you say about change? When I say the word change, how do you feel about it?
I think it doesn't come fast enough.
See? There you go.
This is a beautiful moment.
Yeah.
He has made me realize something I have been fighting against here in the region for a long time. And that is that, gosh, we go to conferences outside. Right now, Sam and Peter are for 4 days in Indy learning all about change. Right. And how to get to the next level of sports coverage. And I'm like, God, why is it such a battle here locally to find investment and find people that want to, go forward with what we're doing? Now, I will tell you this, in the last year, that has changed immensely, in that all of a sudden people are like, you know what, I like this. I want to be part of it. You're one of them. And I never really thought about the actual idea that change is bad. It's not that. It's not like that in Indianapolis.
No, it's not. It's not. But again, and I used the wrong. It's called the expectancy theory, and again, it's actually a sociological theory that says that we expect things to be essentially the way they were yesterday, and when they change, we get upset many times, and we want to go back to the old way.
This is why I'm kind of like the auxiliary third chair dude who, hey, I'm sitting out there working. If you want me to come in and talk, I'm a wind-up toy.
This
Go
is
ahead.
Fun. This is fun.
Hey, but Bob Starkey's over there. Right. He's looking at his watch.
Hey,
so.
we're out of time for today. We're gonna yes. Bob is giving us Bob's giving us the arm tap. We got to go. It's been the morning call with Tom Dabertin on WJOB. It's great to be here with you. We'll be back again next Wednesday morning, beginning at 6 a.m. Keep it tuned all day, all week, right here to WJOB, 1230 M, 104.7 FM. And coming up next is the Town of Dyer Show. Have a great day, folks.
Hey, one last thing. Take this word. It's Lynette.
No.
Lynette.
Yes.
Lynette. Hey, all day you forget one thing. You can't remember one thing about this. Change can't come fast enough.
Take care, folks.